Hello there everyone, this is Jed Schlackman, and for this video I'll be speaking about the subject of addiction and looking into the traditional 12-step recovery program process and how that can play a role in facilitating progress in overcoming addictions and, in a sense, in helping a person break the habit of being themselves or their old self so they can be kind of transformed or evolved in a way into a more integrated and whole version, a version of yourself that's more connected to your spiritual source, whether you call that God or higher power or some other name or title. So to start with, let's consider really what addictions are and what role they play in our life and our human experience. When a person has an addiction, they have a desire or craving or compulsion to engage in a particular behavior or action. So they're doing that because in some way it gives them a desirable feeling. They associate something positive or desirable with that specific action or activity or substance they're using, whatever it may be. So the addiction, in a sense, relates to our natural desire to seek pleasure and to avoid discomfort or pain. So we're either getting something pleasant or desirable from that addictive behavior, or we're avoiding something unpleasant or undesirable. So there are many people that are addicted to painkillers, for example, because it gives them relief from their pain. Of course, we look at pain in a more holistic way as a signal or a message that there's something that needs attention, that needs to be healed or addressed in some way. So continually suppressing or trying to escape from that pain may actually be avoiding or delaying some type of a healing process. Of course, when we use some type of addictive substance or behavior to seek a pleasurable sensation, you might call that to feel elevated or high, per se, in that sense, it's usually short-lived, right? So you're getting that immediate gratification, that pleasant feeling. It could be a dopamine rush, whatever that feeling that gives you a sense of well-being is. But then it wears off, and often the crash or withdrawal leads you to feel even worse than you did before you took that substance or engaged in that addictive behavior. So ultimately, you still have to face or confront yourself, your relationship with life, how you feel about yourself, and whatever issues or challenges you might be dealing with in life. They don't go away and disappear as a result of whatever addiction you're indulging in. They're still going to be there. So healing or recovery programs are often designed to help us confront these realities and actually face life, face ourselves, and connect with resources or spiritual or other forms of support that will help us be better able to deal with life and its inherent challenges. So we're going to look at the basic structure, the foundation of 12-step programs, the principles that are taught. So looking at the traditional AA type 12-step program, you have the following 12 steps, which are designed to be proceeded through, let's say, in a sequential manner. So one step prepares you to go into the next one, and over time you're, in a way, integrating them all, working on all of them. They all become part of your life. So the first one states that we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, or you could fill in the blank with another type of addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. So that first step involves acknowledging this problem that you have, essentially that you've lost control over your life. This addiction has kind of taken over. So even though you might not want to be in that addiction, somehow you're not able to regain control or power over your own life. The second step states that you came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, I should say we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So the idea there is that yourself, this identity that's caught up in this addiction, in and of itself, from that place of being in a way, isn't able to restore its sanity, but it has the potential to access this greater power, this higher spiritual source that will be able to assist and guide this individual personality here to work through this process to overcome this addiction. So there's the belief in the higher power and the ability of that power to enable you to claim yourself to be freed of that addiction. The third step states that we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God or the higher power as we understood Him or that power. So there is this foundation of believing in some higher power that's there to help enable your recovery, and that you're turning your will over in a way to your higher power, to that greater aspect of self. So this is a decision that you're making, so it's like your ego has to let go at this point and recognize that who I am, or who I've been up until now, functioning in my life in this way, hasn't been able to break free of this addiction. So it's going to take something beyond this version of myself to support and facilitate the recovery. The fourth step states that we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So this implies some sense or standard of what's right and wrong, some idea of or ideal of who you should be acting as in your life. So it's about having this sense of morality or ethics, of being the person that you desire or aspire to be, and where you haven't lived up to that. For many people, the morality would come from their religious belief or tradition, but even if you don't follow a specific religion, you would likely have some personal ideal or code of conduct for yourself of what you believe is the desirable way to live your life. So to be really honest in self-reflection and truly examining your life and seeing where you're not meeting your own standards or ideals. The fifth step says we admitted to God or to the higher power, to ourselves and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. So if you're able to be honest about where you've not lived up to the standards that you wish to aspire to follow, then that's going to help further this process of personal growth and healing. So it's one thing to just acknowledge it to yourself, but then the next part is to be able to acknowledge this to other people, so that you're not hiding yourself, or you're not hiding your truth or your weaknesses or whatever you may have done in the past that you look back on and wish or regret having done, wish you hadn't done or regret. So to be able to speak this, to express it to at least someone else, and to what you perceive as the higher power, that's part of this process. The sixth step is that we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So you're ready to let go of your old identity and to invite that higher power to lift you up, to transform you, and in doing so, clear away all those parts of your old identity that you might label as defects or flaws. Now, as human beings, it's natural to have these weaknesses or limitations or distortions in our personality and our identity. So this isn't about shaming ourselves over that. It's just about asking to be uplifted, to evolve, to improve ourselves, to reach a higher version of our potential. So it's not about self-judgment and self-condemnation. It's just about being honest about those aspects of ourselves that we feel or believe we can improve on, and then letting go of whatever part of ourself might still be attached to those old patterns or old habits, whatever they may be. Because at some point in our life or our journey, it may have seemed that those were useful or they served some purpose, maybe for our physical or social group acceptance or survival, whatever it might have been. It seemed to have value to us at whatever point in time we began that particular trait or habit, whatever it might be. So we're ready now, though, to let those things go, to realize they're not serving us here and now for who we wish to become. They've actually created this difficulty or disturbance in our life. They've actually inhibited our fulfillment or our wholeness. The next step is that we humbly asked him, or asked our higher power, to remove our shortcomings. So first is the readiness, so to be willing, and then the next part is the actual asking with humility. The next step in the 12 steps is that we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So we're kind of bringing clarity to where we've, in some way, from our perspective, created harm for others. And within our heart, you could say we're opening or becoming willing to make amends to them in whatever way that is possible. And then the next step is that we may direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. So at that step, you're taking the action. So first, you prepared yourself, you became willing to take that action for amends, and now you're actually going forward with it, actually carrying out the amends to those who you can make amends to. The next step is that we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So this means in our life we continue this process of honest self-reflection. This is something that's never ending, since we're here as human beings and we tend to react to things in life, to use whatever patterns might have worked or served us in our past, and we often reactivate those without thinking, without being mindful. So it's to continually observe, to continually reflect on how you are functioning in your life. This is something that we could do without feeling ashamed, without condemning ourselves, but just to be aware of where we need to continue to focus our attention on self-improvement. We're not here expecting perfection. We're here just working to continually self-improve. The next step is that we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God or the higher power as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So this is that continual focus on serving a greater purpose or higher will, whether you're labeling that as God or your own higher self or soul or higher power. The you here, this ego or personality self, will always have its distortions, but it also has the power to release those, to surrender them, and connect more fully with the higher will, with your greater potential from that spiritual perspective. And the final step in the 12-step sequence is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. We try to carry this message to alcoholics or addicts, whoever you're working with, and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So it's really a lifelong commitment, a way of life. And the idea is that as you maintain this commitment to going through all of these steps, the natural result or inevitable result of that is a spiritual awakening, essentially, or being reborn or regenerated or renewed to become more your spiritual self and to not be so much controlled or trapped in your addictions. So as you become this greater spiritual self, that spiritual expanded version of you, let's call it that, is now empowered beyond the power of the addiction. So as you transform yourself, you get to that point where that addiction doesn't have that power over you anymore, because you're tuned in to the divine power, to the ultimate power, let's call it that, rather than feeling you need that addiction to bring you a sense of well-being. So it's a way to work on filling that void within yourself with something that's more truly and deeply fulfilling and empowering, so that you're no longer stuck continually reaching out for that addiction and that temporary fix of whatever you feel is missing or whatever you feel is hurting you. So that's really an outline of the 12-step process as it was laid out in the big book in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now there's an article that I'm reading through from the Very Well website, which presents another way of outlining those 12 steps, where each one of them kind of boils down to one specific quality or principle. So you have the first one, honesty. So after many years of denial, recovery can begin with one simple admission of being powerless over alcohol or any other drug a person's addicted to. The second is faith. Before a higher power can begin to operate, you must first believe that it can. Someone with an addiction accepts that there is a higher power to help them heal. Surrender. You can change your self-destructive decisions by recognizing that you alone cannot recover, but with the help from your higher power you can. Soul searching. The person recovering must identify their problems and get a clear picture of how their behavior affected themselves and others around them. The fifth concept here is integrity. So this step provides great opportunity for growth. The person in recovery must admit their wrongs in front of their higher power and another person. Acceptance. This step 6 has us accepting character defects exactly as they are and becoming entirely willing to let them go. So it's not accepting that you want to continue having them, it's accepting in the sense that you're acknowledging that yes, those are defects or issues that you do truly exhibit in your life. And just by acknowledging it in that way, then you are prepared or ready to be willing to let them go. As long as you're denying or even resisting that they're there, you're not going to have the power to let them go. And then the 7th step is put into the concept here of humility, or asking a higher power to do something that cannot be done just by self-will or mere determination. The 8th step is put into the principle here of willingness. This step involves making a list of those you harmed before coming into recovery. And step 9 is labeled here as forgiveness. So making amends may seem challenging, but for those serious about recovery, it can be a great way to start healing your relationships. And forgiveness isn't just about asking someone else to forgive you. It's about you forgiving or releasing this from within yourself. And to fully do that, it's helpful to go and make amends to other people. So it brings sort of this closure to that, and then you're more able to easily release that, to let go of what you've done before, now that you've done what's reasonably possible for making amends. And the next step, maintenance. Nobody likes to admit being wrong, but it's a necessary step in order to maintain spiritual progress in recovery. So we have to continually reflect on ourselves and continue to apply all these different steps in our life. So it's maintaining this throughout your life, not telling yourself, okay, I've done that, it's finished, it's over with, I don't have to continually look at it. Well, we're human here as we go through this life, and we do need to continually reflect on ourselves in ways that we can improve ourselves. The next step is described as the principle of making contact. The purpose of step 11 is to discover the plan your higher power has for your life. So it's about continually seeking this connection with the higher power, with God, with your soul. So to desire to live in your life with this greater potential, and to use practices that help you connect or tune into that. And then the 12th principle of service. The person in recovery must carry the message to others and put the principles of the program into practice in every area of their life. So service is considered very important. So you've had a person support, mentor, or sponsor you, and now it's your turn to help to support others to play that role for someone else coming through this process of recovery. So in a nutshell, that's the outline of how 12-step programs can support people in recovery from addiction. And many people get a lot of value from being in those programs. Some of it comes just from having a group with a shared purpose or shared values, who are supporting you, who are wishing you success in this journey, who are there to love and accept you even when you do stumble. So that's a valuable aspect of a 12-step program. Now, the program isn't a be-all, end-all, and the people who really are the most likely to be successful to maintain long-term sobriety are those who also use other healing resources as part of their recovery. So this 12-step process isn't there to replace having individual therapy for whatever personal issues or past traumas you may have dealt with. It doesn't replace maintaining certain healthy lifestyle habits, maintaining a balanced diet, exercising, finding positive social groups or connections. So these are all things that you can include in your recovery. You can also seek out other forms of spiritual support. So you may have other groups that you're part of, spiritual or religious groups that give you some spiritual nurturing. So those can be complementing what you're doing in a 12-step program. So all of those different pieces can be kind of assembled together in your life as part of your healing path. And it's something that you do want to be committed to as a lifelong journey. It's also helpful to consider that we kind of all interpret things in our own way. Just as some people think of God as the God character in their particular religion, others may think of it as a universal energy source or some form of infinite intelligence. So with the wording of different statements and principles in a 12-step program, different people might relate to them in slightly different ways. For example, the idea of admitting that you're powerless over your addiction. Some people kind of overly internalize that, and they see themselves as forever limited by the addiction or the substance, and that they'll never be able to touch that substance for the rest of their life, because in their belief, if they do so, it will bring them back into the addiction. Whereas there are other people who have a belief or confidence that as long as they maintain their commitment to working on this recovery process, there will be some point where they'll be able to use the substance in a way that's not addictive. So they might be able to socially drink and not feel compelled to start addictively or compulsively using again. So it does somewhat depend on the person. We're not all exactly alike. For some people, they find they do need to maintain complete abstinence. For others, they find that they don't. So there's no need to judge that one of those approaches is right and the other is wrong. It just happens to be that way, that some people are successful in one way or one path, and others are successful in a different way or a different path. The more that we fully embody our spiritual self or our higher power, the way I see it, the less we are controlled by any external substance or force that we perceive in the outside world, the more centered in our own being we become. So as you spiritually progress, you are less controlled or influenced by addictions, as well as by other people or other social pressures and all of that. So I encourage everyone to work on their spiritual growth, on their self-awareness. So becoming more of who you potentially can be as a spiritual being, rather than limited to an insecure ego identity or a person that's always seeking some form of external stimulation or external approval. So to outgrow that, at least to some extent, so you're more centered or more connected to that spiritual essence. In a way, recovery is not just breaking the habit of an addiction, but it's breaking out of your old identity or your old self. There's an author who wrote a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and that idea is in a way about rewiring our neural pathways. The more that we engage in a particular pattern or habit, the more that becomes sort of the default pathway in our body and our nervous system. But we have the power to rewire things, neuroplasticity and subconscious reprogramming. So things are not set the way they have been. You're not, for your whole life, going to be functioning in the addictive pattern if you take these steps to break yourself out of that old pattern, that old identity, that old way of being that you're used to. I hope that this discussion has given each of you some insights, some inspiration on how you can progress in a path of recovery from any form of addiction, and how you can support other people in their process of working to overcome addictions. This isn't something that we need to force or impose on anyone, but we can use these concepts, these ideas, and different holistic healing resources to support people who are ready and open and willing to use those approaches for their personal growth. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day, and for those that are interested in learning more about holistic health and wellness, you can visit my website, phinsights.com. That's PHINSIGHTS.com. Namaste.